to the latest in a series of US2U Consulting Podcasts. Today we're going to be exploring the subjects of outplacement and career transition, things that impact on a lot of us at different times in our lives. You may have already seen our previous two podcasts, the first one being about mental health in the workplace and the second one being around developing sales performance. The aim with all our podcasts is to update and inform you, to give you practical advice and guidance that's really going to help you as you go forward and achieve your particular goals. At US2U Consulting, our strapline is guaranteed to make a positive difference, and we really do hope that this actually makes a positive difference in terms of your understanding of this particular subject area today. If you'd like to give us any feedback or like to find out anything further or get in touch, any management related questions, do actually contact me. My email address is rachelb@us2uconsulting.com. That's Rachel, Rachel B @US2 consulting.com. You can also follow us on Twitter @US2U Consulting, take a look at our website, or actually subscribe to our channel. Today, I'm really pleased to be joined by Jan Baynham and Mark Fuller, two of the US2U Consulting team, who are going to share some of their different experiences with you. We all go back, I know, a long way, and clearly I understand that you've got many years of recruitment experience, which means that whether it's reading CVs, whether it's actually sifting CVs, deciding who's going to be invited for interview versus who's going to go on the not today thank you pile. You've got lots of experience of that you want to share today. You've also got experience of actually conducting the interview process, and also when it comes to assessment centres, you've got lots of experience of actually observing exercises, role plays, presentations, giving feedback, that type of thing. I guess a good starting point is by thinking about what does it actually mean. So what do we mean by outplacement and career transition? So Jan, if you'd like to kick off.
Okay, well often the terms are used interchangeably because both of them refer to support helping people into new roles. If we were to differentiate between the two, we can see outplacement as supporting people who are about to lose their jobs or have lost their jobs through an organisation restructuring or downsizing. For most people in these situations, it's a matter of finding a new role, but some people might be considering retraining or even setting up their own business. Now, career transition is a term that's often used for wider reasons for people seeking job change. It may be somebody just considering a career direction change, or they might be in a role that they're finding unsatisfying or overly challenging and are really looking to move on. But whatever the reason for the job change, our support service really is aimed at tailoring it specifically to the person so we can help them move forward.
Oh, that's really interesting. And so if that's what it is, I guess the next question is, who's it for? So Mark, do you want to fill us in with that one?
Yeah, well, outplacement and career transition support is it's there for everybody at all levels. So we work with directors, senior managers, administrative, operational and support roles, and we also offer the service across a range of different disciplines. So we work with people in the commercial sector, not-for-profit and public sector. And in terms of roles, we go the whole way through sort of administration, finance, HR, IT and general support. So these services are relevant for basically everybody in all types of organisations.
Oh, that's really interesting. I guess the next thing to understand is at what part of the process should people actually have the benefit of this outplacement support, and how long it actually takes?
Yeah, well, with respect to outplacement support, it's really best started at the point that people know for certain that they're about to be made redundant and they're going to lose their job. Because knowing that support's available can really support them in reducing anxieties, but also actually creating that plan to move forward. And if we think about general transition support, it's sometimes less time critical, but still, it's best started at the point where people feel they really do need some support in their career decision making and moving forward.
How long does it take, Mark? Tell us about how long does the process actually take?
Well, we offer a flexible range of packages which are based on 6, 9 or 12 hours of support, but we also offer longer packages if required, and we can always extend current packages. So it's really flexible, but the sort of core The core packages are based around 6, 9 or 12 hours of support.
Okay, so that's really interesting just to give people a bit of a framework in terms of what's involved if people haven't experienced it before as a service. And I guess the next thing is thinking through what actually are the tangible benefits that people tend to get out of it.
Well, when people are sort of facing redundancy in particular, it's about helping them sort of put together an individually relevant and flexible sort of job search program. And then that will lead to them finding a new job which really suits their sort of needs and interests in as quick a time as possible.
It's also about reducing the emotional impact of redundancy. For some people it can feel quite devastating, particularly if they've been in a job for a long time or they haven't approached the job market over a number of years. So it can really support people through reducing concerns, really supporting them to think forward their next direction, coming along with a concrete action plan.
Oh, that's really interesting. And I guess one of the interesting questions is, if an organisation is having to lose people because they're going through a difficult time, for example, why do organisations actually spend money on supporting people?
Well, it's more than just support for those people who are leaving the organisation. It's really about protecting your image and your reputation and also your employer brand.
It's also an opportunity to demonstrate that companies are actually sort of living their values. You often hear a lot of organisations say that people are their most important asset. Well, this is a real opportunity to demonstrate that in action. And the other thing to be aware of is that redundancy has a real impact on those people who are remaining with the business. It causes levels of anxiety which can impact on productivity. So knowing that their colleagues are going to be supported to find new roles goes a long way to restoring levels of sort of trust and engagement that will be crucial to the business going forward.
So that's quite a key point really, isn't it? It's not just about the benefit for the individual who's maybe leaving the organisation, it's also the impact on the other people who are still staying with the organisation. That's not always maybe apparent initially, so that's a really good point. And then, what does a typical support package look like for outplacement or career transition?
Well, I think the first thing to say is there isn't as such a sort of typical package, because it's the sort of key point about what we offer is that it's completely flexible and reflects sort of the needs of each particular individual. But having said that, there are a number of sort of fairly common elements that you would expect to find in any of our programs.
Yes, the first of all is support in evaluating your career direction. It's taking time to really think about your career aspirations and the options available to you. We'll look at different career paths, if that's applicable, but importantly, we really support people in identifying their strengths, really looking at their skills, also their achievements, and then combine that in moving forward with, as I keep saying, that defined action plan, which is really important.
Another element is advice and support in conducting an effective job search. So that means sort of planning an effective sort of online job search, also how to make best use of the internet. And then we move on to think about how to approach recruitment consultancies and other selection organisations. And it's also important these days to think about networking, which is very important in today's job market. So what we can do is we can help you plan an effective networking strategy, give you some advice on particular tools and techniques, and also help to allay some of the fears that are sort of rather natural when you come to talk to people about networking.
Oh, okay, that's interesting. What sort of fears do people have about when it comes to talking about networking?
Well, I think it's just the sort of natural fear that comes with sort of perhaps approaching people that you don't know or don't know very well, and the associated sort of fear of rejection. But as I said, we can sort of work with you, and through the sort of tools and techniques we can help develop, we can certainly allay those fears and allow you to approach it with confidence.
Oh, that sounds an excellent benefit, isn't it? Especially if people are sort of feeling vulnerable and they've still got confront the networking side of things. That sounds really, really useful.
So we also typically include support in personal marketing, and this involves typically developing a credible CV which showcases your strengths and your experiences and supports the career that you're moving towards. We can also provide advice on tailoring your CV to specific job roles and also help you in supporting statements and also covering letters.
There's quite a lot involved really in the whole job search when you actually break it down to the component parts, aren't there? So I guess if somebody hasn't been on the job market for a while, that's really important that they are guided through all those different steps.
We can also help with interview preparation, and we also offer the opportunity for a mock interview where we can actually conduct an interview with a specific vacancy in mind and then provide some detailed and constructive feedback. We also offer the sort of option for ongoing support, and that's usually delivered by the telephone or through email, and that's really to deal with the sort of queries that arise when someone's applying for a particular job. You know, how do I best tweak my CV for this, or do I need a covering letter, and what needs to be included in that.
Oh, so it's all very flexible, then tailored around each individual and what stage they're at with their job hunt. And what about including things such as psychometric testing as part of the outplacement career transition process? Where does that kind of thing fit in?
Well, it's one of the options that we offer. It can really help people with personal insights into what their strengths are, what their personal preferences are, and also those areas that might come least naturally to them, or areas they might find unsatisfying in a particular job role. And if we look at the information that it provides, it gives people confidence in knowing the things that an employer might find if it's used within the selection process. And also things like ability testing, such as verbal and numerical ability tests, that can again help people to identify their particular strengths.
Oh, that's really interesting. It sounds like you've both got lots of experience of actually supporting and helping people, which is clearly great. What's the best thing in your experience about getting involved with people when they may be at a vulnerable time of their lives and you're actually able to help them?
Well, for me, it's about knowing that you've provided the sort of advice and support that's enabled someone to quickly find a new job that's a really good match for their abilities and interests. And it's also about knowing that you've helped develop their confidence, which may also have taken a knock in a redundancy situation, and it's helping them understand the full range of their abilities and potential.
And that sounds great stuff, yeah.
It's also about providing that emotional support and reassurance as well. For some people, they do feel quite unsettled by the whole process, and it's actually giving them that focus to help them in their career decision making and to really think about how they're going to approach the job market.
And then, working with different people in different roles, or different sectors you talked about, I'm sure isn't without its challenges. So what do you tend to find have been the most kind of challenging things that you've been facing?
Well, often I find you're sort of dealing with people whose sort of confidence is sort of really being knocked by the experience of being made redundant. For example, they may have been sort of working for their current employer for a really long period of time, and they may think that these sort of skills and knowledge they've got won't be relevant in the wider employment market. They may even feel that sort of redundancy has been somehow their own fault. And in some cases, there's a fear, particularly if you've not been in the job market for a while, that you'll find it really hard to adapt to today's job market where so much of it is delivered online.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, I agree with Mark. It's often about overcoming limiting beliefs. It might be, my age is against me, or I won't be able to use my skills elsewhere. And it's really working through those things with people.
Oh, that's good. And what do people normally say once they've completed the service? What's the kind of feedback that you get from people?
Well, they're particularly appreciative of the time we take at the beginning to really understand their needs and interests. And for me recently, I've had some feedback from some of the clients I've worked with, and they've really appreciated the advice and guidance that I've been able to give. That's perhaps pointed them in the direction of a career option that matches their interests, that they wouldn't necessarily have thought was possible in the current climate. So they're grateful for the opportunity to look more widely.
Mm-hmm. That's good.
Yeah, no, I agree with Mark. And often it's about comments on it's giving people practical support, getting a better CV, approaching interviews more positively and actually being able to really present yourself well in an interview. And it's just building confidence generally.
Yeah, it's good. And any interesting stories you can actually share with our audience today?
Yeah, I was recently working with someone who'd worked in the aviation industry for all their life, and to be honest, it was the only thing they'd ever wanted to do. So they were really struggling to see how their skills would be relevant to anything other than that particular industry. So I started talking to them about the most challenging things that they'd found in that role, most of which revolved around dealing with difficult customers. So I sort of reflected back to them that if you could successfully deal with an argumentative drunk at 30,000 feet, then you had a range of communication and conflict management skills that would be of real relevance and interest to a wide range of employers. And the boost that gave to their confidence just realising that was immediate, and it really helped them go forward and find a new job a lot quicker than they'd initially expected.
Oh, it's great. And how about you, Jan?
Yeah, I mean, much of the work that we do is helping people to overcome either perceived or actual obstacles. I was working with one person who had had a number of unsuccessful job interviews, and during the interview practice it became very apparent that he was having difficulty in answering the question without going off at a tangent. And also his mannerisms and way of presenting things was just so overly effusive that it really detracted away from the content of his answers. So we really worked on that over a series of sessions, and we were both delighted when he actually moved on to get the job that he wanted.
Oh, that's great success stories there, which is what we want at the end of the day, isn't it? That positive difference coming through. So that's good. And then, I guess, as far as our audience is concerned, what would be the top 3 pieces of advice that you'd like to share, things that people can actually take away from the podcast and really think about if they find themselves in this situation?
Well, the first thing I'd say is take stock. So before you start to look for another job, really just take some time out to define, what are your minimum requirements in terms of salary, in terms of work location, and also working hours. Then start to think about what it is that really interests and motivates you in a new job, and also what sort of values do you want any new employer to represent. So secondly, I think it's about being flexible, particularly in today's job market. Don't necessarily assume that your new job has to sort of be an exact match for what you've done before, and that think more broadly in terms of perhaps your skills rather than job duties. And also it's about realising that your next job might not be the ideal one. Mm-hmm. And it's perhaps necessary to view it as a sort of stepping stone on the way to your final direction rather than the ideal move. And finally, it's really to think about networking. So in this sense, sort of the purpose of networking is to find information out about sort of where the job opportunities are, perhaps changes in your particular sector or the sort of role that you're in. So the first place I would suggest you start is by making a list of all your sort of potential contacts. So you can start with former colleagues, customers, people you know through business networks, local interest groups, and really sort of define, as wide a list of contacts as possible. And then it's also about thinking about how you make that initial approach, because these days busy people don't necessarily appreciate an unscheduled phone call. Mm-hmm. So why not use sort of LinkedIn to make that initial contact? And also when making the contact, it's perhaps not always advisable just to sort of go straight in and say, have you got any job vacancies? But you could position it in terms of wanting to find out more about the particular industry or the company, or even ask for their advice on how you should conduct your job search.
Oh, that's really interesting. So a slightly different approach rather than the actually being completely direct in the initial contact. And that's really helpful. And how about you, Jan?
I agree with Mark's tips, but also I would add as well, really think about your CV and tailoring it to each individual application, and also your application letters too. People like myself and Mark sifting through CVs, you can tell when somebody's got the bog standard CV that they're sending across to every employer. It's really doing that tailoring process. It's really worth the time. And also, it's really putting in time to prepare for your interview. It's thinking about what they might ask you, it's researching the company, and it's thinking about what you really want to put across in terms of your skills and your achievements. And then thirdly, I'd say, if you have been made redundant, really think about how you put that across in an interview. Because sometimes people can come across as still somewhat bitter or angry about this situation, and it can create a feeling of negativity, people feeling perhaps you haven't quite moved on. So during the interview coaching, we can really support you in how you might present your current situation and more constructively during the interview.
Oh, lots of practical advice and tips coming out there. That's really, really good. You mentioned a few times there that people may have their confidence knocked, they might be feeling quite vulnerable, they might be feeling it's their fault they're in this situation, etc. So how do you tend to handle it when people are really upset and quite maybe distressed about the situation?
I think the first thing is to listen, and to listen sympathetically and give people an opportunity to talk and express their emotions, because sometimes people don't want to talk about it with their partner or people at work. So it's the listening time. But it's also giving people reassurance that lots of people go through redundancy and, importantly, get through redundancy. And it's also giving them as well reassurance that, look, we've got lots of practical tools that can support you, and it just gives people reassurance that they can actually move forward.
Oh, that's great. So lots of practical advice and support there. So to sum up then, what's the one thing that you think people should take away so they can make a positive difference to their situation?
Well, for me, it's very simple. Believe in yourself. In my experience, everybody's got sort of far more potential and ability than sometimes they get to sort of use in a normal work situation. So hold on to that belief and use that and really see this as the opportunity for a path to a job that can really be possibly even more fulfilling and rewarding than you've done in the past.
Brilliant. So believe in yourself.
Yeah. And it's also just taking out the time as well to sharpen up your skills in approaching the job market. Getting your CV as best as you possibly can, and also honing your interview techniques.
So develop your skills, believe in yourself, some great things to take away. And so to sum up and wrap up the podcast from today, we do hope you found this really informative and interesting and refreshing to actually give you some practical advice and tips. Do get in touch with me at rachelb@US2U Consulting.com for any feedback, management questions, etc. And we look forward to seeing you on the next podcast.